Hi, everybody. Welcome to My Other's
Hello.
Keeper. I've got our favorite Krystal on here. Yay! And we're going to continue on with our discussion about healing and mental health struggles, but at the same time, um, therapy and going through it and um, becoming what would you call it, Krystal? Becoming what?
Um, Becoming more whole.
I like that. Yep. Becoming
Um,
more whole.
Putting some of the pieces back into the tapestry.
Oh, good idea. Yes. It's like you look at this you look at this scarf and you see lots and lots of colors. And not all of the colors are this really light white. Some of them are kind of a purplish color, some of them are a greenish color, some of them are, all of that kind of stuff and it's you may not like the color green, but you're going to have to go through it to make the scarf, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the image of tapestry. Um yeah, so let's do
There's
that.
there's a story about someone whose life was all they saw was the knots and the bad stuff that had happened to them. And in a dream that they had, they were seeing all these knots and everything, and they were
Yeah.
asking God why all these knots and stuff. And he
Hmm.
said, "Come and look on the other side." And on the other side was this beautiful tapestry of just, yeah, just beauty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and
It's
even
like when I
how,
show a painting like this, you see a lot of black, but then there's a lot of really brilliant color and bright and white. And
yeah,
the black has to exist in order for the beautiful bright and white and all of that to even show up. And that's not saying that it's not going to be tough, because frankly, those dark times are dark, really
yeah,
dark. But yeah, when we focus on the little bit, hi Mary, when we focus on the
Mary.
little bit of what's going on right now, it's rarely going to be a full picture of what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess,
when we finished yesterday, or on what day is
yeah.
today? Thursday. When we
Hi,
finished on
Brian.
Tuesday. Hey Brian, nice to see you.
Good to see some friends.
Nice to I love seeing friends in here. Yes.
Yeah.
Um so
I
where
think,
were we? You had just been diagnosed, I seem to recall. Is that right?
well, we kind of went through all of the diagnosis, and I think I want to talk about my surgery,
All right.
um, and kind of how that led up to the up to the final surgery. And I guess in a way it's my my journey with preventing cancer and doing what I can to prevent it. Um, I have cancer on both sides of my family.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's dad had two different types of cancer.
Really?
I didn't really know about the first one until I was talking to my uncle after mom passed away. Um, and he had lung cancer and tuberculosis.
Ooh.
And then the one that ended up taking him was a brain tumor. And they found it, and within a month he was gone.
Yeah. That
Um,
would have been back in the days when there wasn't the medical imaging that we have today, and just not having the technologies that are,
well, he
well,
was
no, how long ago was it?
in '88.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's a
87.
few
But he was
that's a
also
few hundred years ago.
he was also very stubborn and would not go
Can't
to the
imagine.
doctor.
Yeah,
He would not go to the doctor, and a lot of
right.
people were like that back in that day and
Yeah,
age,
yeah,
more than today. But
yes, yeah.
I also my grandma on my dad's side, so his mom had ovarian cancer,
Mm,
and his one sister, Lillian, she ended up passing of ovarian cancer as well. And my Aunt Annie passed of breast cancer.
right.
And knowing that as a young person, um,
Hey,
especially
Danielle.
that there's female cancer in my history, I think I was probably about 12 when I made the decision that as soon as I knew I was in menopause, everything was coming out.
Wow. That happened a
Because,
little bit more before your menopause, though. Yeah,
yes, but I grew up knowing that I would do
it was a
everything I could to prevent.
right.
And so it just, knowing that, and also knowing that I had endometriosis even right from a young teen, like just starting
Oh,
my, yeah. And endometriosis can actually turn into cancer.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's also one of the diseases that if you've been essayed,
Ah, yep,
you are more likely to have. It
absolutely.
doesn't, it,
It's amazing how something being done to you can change your DNA to the point where it triggers an autoimmune disorder.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it,
wow.
it by no means says that if you have the disease, you absolutely 100% were abused. But they have actually, and I had actually asked doctors about this, and there wasn't the research back
Mm,
in like 2000, 2002,
right.
and 4. But since there's been research and they have found that it is one that's highly likely if you have it, you've been assaulted.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Something
and,
else that I've heard.
and, and specifically essay.
Right. Something else that I've heard. I heard it years and years and years ago, and I've asked doctors about it, and I've looked it up, and there's tangential evidence. So, like, not firm, hard evidence, but like,
Mhm.
by the way, uh, people who have been essayed are very likely to have lower back problems, but not everybody with lower back problems have been essayed, right? And you and I both have significant back issues. So, yeah.
Well,
And I'm not talking about magazines. So,
yeah.
yeah.
No, some of my back issues, and mom was the one that told me this. I fell down the stairs from top to bottom onto the concrete floor
I did that. I
when
was 6.
I was little. I think I was like 2 or 3. She said when I
Mm,
did that. Um, so yeah, there's other reasons.
yeah.
When they took X-rays of my spine, I think I was 17 at that point
Mhm.
when they first took them. There's a check mark at the bottom of my spine. Literally goes in the tailbone as a check mark, and so
Yeah.
I've literally, well, now I've broken it about 4 times altogether.
Oh, my. No,
So
I bent mine when I fell down the stairs. I was 6, and my grandma had wooden polished stairs, and I went down every stair going ow, 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 ow. Anyway, and so yeah, and then again, the tailbone hooked in toward the body more than what it should, and I've never broken it, but I've bruised it a few times. And the doctor who first took a look at the x-ray and saw that. He's like, yeah, when she has a baby, it's going to break. And it didn't break either of my children. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
no,
good.
it was, yeah, I'm glad. But
The
nope.
the most recent time that I broke it was about a week before inventory a few years ago. And at that point, I was actually going to the track that's in town to do power walks.
Oh,
And so I had gone there, and and of course, it was the end of February, and I was careful going in because I knew that the parking lot was quite icy, and
yeah.
I know how to walk like a penguin to keep yourself from. Well, no, you lean forward and
Oh
take
yeah.
very
Oh yeah.
small steps so that you don't end up
And your hands have to kind of be
falling
like
back.
this. So you're, yeah. Anyway,
But
yeah.
I finished my walk and walked down the stairs and out to the parking lot, knowing that it was icy and being very careful. And I still had my car at the time, not my SUV that I have now.
Hmm.
And I went to get into my car, and there was a couple of other ladies, and I went to turn the key in the door of my car, and I went down.
Oh no.
And
Ow.
both of them were coming over and, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Not wanting
Yeah.
to let on that I was,
In a lot of pain.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the next day I had an incredibly long day, and I knew I would. And I couldn't sit without it hurting. I couldn't stand without it hurting.
Hmm. Yep. Did you get it
So,
x-rayed?
no,
No? Oh, okay.
why bother? I knew it was
Okay.
broken.
Just get, well, was it broken or bruised? Because when I bruised mine, I talked to my chiropractor and she's like, it's going to take 18 months for until it'll quit hurting. And we're not talking not like just barely. No, 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 no. It and at almost exactly 18 months, gone. Pain was gone. So, and
Yeah,
Mary,
no.
she has broken her tailbone too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is
Well,
super
it still
painful.
hurts every now and then.
Yep.
There's the odd time I have to use my donut.
Yeah. Mary, how did
But
you break your tailbone? Tell us in the comments how, if you're comfortable telling us what happened. I'd love to hear the story. So, yeah. Okay, so tell me about your surgery before your last surgery.
so my first surgery happened in the beginning of January in 2000,
Hmm.
and that was I'm I'm going to say this right out. I much prefer, after having as many surgeries as I have, I much prefer to deal with male gynecologists than female gynecologists, because
Really?
both the female gynecologists that I've had, um, the one, it felt like she was violating me,
Ooh,
and the second one, she sent her male student into the room for the post-op. I had never met him before, and she did not come in the room. And she had been told, I had told her I did not want students.
for sure.
And I tell that to all my doctors. I'm sorry, I don't want I don't want students.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to put Mary's up here. Christina was 5 and in the shower, and I told her mom would be right back. She was safe. Now, mind you, she has autism, so she went looking for mama. And of course, she was dripping from the shower. And I didn't see it on the tile floor, and I went down hard. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Slippery tile floors are very unforgiving. Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So continue on with your male student?
So no, the
Okay.
first gynecologist was in 2000, and she had tried putting me on the pill, and within the first month of taking it, the ladies that I was working with said to me, they said, Krystal, what is going on? What is different? And they knew I was kind of, you know, dealing with some medical stuff, and I had kind of mentioned that I was on the pill, and they're like, you just started that pill, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah. They said, stop taking it, please, because I was unbearable. Yeah.
I'm not going to say how hard you are to deal with now, but that must have been bad.
I was a bear. I was a bear.
Okay, we're gonna finish Mary's conversation here. So she has a kid running on the floor, or running the shower, and I can't get off the floor. She went to grab a phone book to put under her head as a pillow. Oh, that was good for her. Had to call the neighbor to come get her clothed for sure. And the shower turned off. Called her mom at work. By the time she got home, she was going into shock because the floor was cold and I was in pain, and we had to call the paramedics. Ooh. They took her to the hospital by ambulance, and the doctor said it was the cleanest break. Oh, nice. At least it was clean. You know, I bet it smelled like scrubbing bubbles and everything that he had seen his entire career. Oh, wow, Mary. That, yikes. That's for sure. You must have, when you went down, there was no, it was probably just up and just popped it pretty good there. Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, Krystal. So continue, please.
So because the pill didn't work,
right,
my first gynecologist decided, and I'll just call her Dr. P. When that didn't work, she said, okay, then we'll go for surgery and see what's there and whatever. So they went in, they removed a lot of endometriosis.
Oh.
And she also, I had told her about how years earlier I had had a miscarriage. And so she wanted to do a D&C.
Yeah.
And
just make sure everything was out. And
yeah,
I could see that.
Even though by then it was like 7 years.
But still, if something was still in there, it could be very dangerous. Yeah.
And when I saw her in post-op, she said, there's no way that you could have been pregnant. You're too small. And I'm like, well, it happened. I happen to know that. But shortly before that surgery, I went in, I was very nervous and scared. And so I had asked my church to pray for me. And they prayed over me, and I actually felt something happen down in my abdomen.
Oh.
And the lady who had her hand on my abdomen felt it as well. So God obviously did some healing in there.
Nice.
So I had that surgery, and then she said if the surgery didn't work, we would start Depo-Provera injections. Okay, whatever. So I started the Depo-Provera injections, and that's when I ended up on antidepressants the first time. And finally, about 4 years later, I was still having pain from the endometriosis. It wasn't as bad, but I could still tell that there was quite a bit of pain. Well, 4 years after that first surgery, we had a gynecologist that had moved into the small city I was living in.
Okay.
And he's Dr. Yu. He actually came to our church.
Oh, okay.
So
yes, I think you told me about him. Yep.
Yeah.
He and his
he
wife and the
was
1,000 children. Got it.
no, not quite that many kids. Him and his wife had kids in the toddler room while I was working in the toddler room. So he literally had most of the toddlers at that point had been delivered by him. So,
Nice. That is
so
awesome.
all the mums around the room, and him in there too. And it was just kind of
Hi, Doc. Yeah.
one of them. Literally, she had her baby and on a Saturday, and he came in on the Sunday morning, and he goes, "Where are you going?" Because she's standing up and she's packing her bag and everything. She goes, "Heading to church. See you later."
I was there a week after my first was born, but not the day after. Oh my word, I was not out of bed. Wow.
Well, this was her third one, so
Yeah.
that
And my
one just
first
kind of
one was
walked
a
out.
C-section, so that was a little different. So yeah.
But I asked him about going in for surgery again to find out what was going on.
Hmm.
And I also found out at that point that um, if I was prone to depression, I shouldn't be on depot. And so I kind of stopped or started to cut down on my antidepressant that I was on. And I went in for my surgery, and literally within 3 months of my surgery, I was completely off the antidepressant that I was on.
Fabulous.
And it's one of the toughest ones to come off of.
Really.
But
Yeah.
he found quite a bit of endometriosis again, and there was also cysts that he ended up taking off.
Oh,
So then he
okay.
started talking to me about getting an IUD. I was very cautious I didn't really want to put anything else, go through anything else, just because I was
Yeah.
so scared. So I literally was in his office 2 or 3 times for a couple of weeks just to get this all figured out. And he explained that the IUD is a different type of hormone than the pill and Depo-Provera.
Right.
Okay, I'll allow this to be put in. Well, a year and a half later, I am still having pains. I wasn't having even any breakthrough bleeding, but there was extreme pain.
I'm just going to poke in here for a moment. For those who
Mm-hmm.
don't know, Depo-Provera is an injection, and it's a birth control method that lasts, I think it's 3 months.
Yeah.
And every 3 months you have to get an injection. So yeah, and there are some wackadoodle side effects. My side effect, I gained 40 pounds that first 3 months, and I
Yikes.
have not been able to take it off. It's we did it before I got married, so that was 29 years ago. So yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy.
it
Well,
is. You have to be careful what you put in yourself.
between the Depo and the antidepressant that they put me on, I gained a good 60 pounds, which
Exactly.
I got rid of 40 of it very quickly once I got off
Oh,
the
nice.
Depo and
Hmm.
the antidepressant. But with the IUDs, they go in and they're in for about 5 years, at least the one that I had in.
Oh, okay.
So a year and a half after surgery number 2, I went back to this same doctor, Dr. Yu,
Hmm.
and I said, look, I am still having major problems with pain and cramping and stuff. And he said, well, I don't really want to go back in because they don't like taking you in
No,
earlier than 2 years apart.
for sure.
But he said, well, I'll take you in again and see what happens. And so he took me back in to surgery, and he actually told me, he says, I'm really surprised at the amount of growth that was there. And he
Really?
again he again removed some cysts. And of course, through this whole thing, I'm going, okay, when's menopause coming? Because
Yeah.
as soon as it comes, everything's coming out. Because
Right.
I was so over it by then.
Yep. Yank the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. And so about 16 years ago, I was again thinking, I need to get this checked out, see what's going on. And so I was referred to another female gynecologist in the bigger city that was about 2 hours away from where I live now.
Yep.
I had already moved here,
Mm-hmm.
and so my mentor and pastor's wife at the time, she took me in for the surgery. And then when I went for the follow-up on that one, well, actually, I need to back up a little bit. When I went for the first consult, she said, okay, I'm going to send you for ultrasounds to see if we can see what's going on. And so I was sent for ultrasounds, and there was a huge cyst on, I think she said it was on the right. But she
On your
couldn't
ovary?
really, yeah, but she couldn't
Okay.
really see too much of endometriosis. She was really hesitant to go in because she wasn't sure if there was too much scar tissue or not. And so she had actually told me there's a possibility that we will have to open you up and not just do laparoscopic surgery.
Yep.
And I was
And
not.
again, for people who don't know what laparoscopic surgery is, what they do is they poke holes in your belly. One of the holes has a thing for air to go in, and it swells you up so you look like you're pregnant. And then the other holes are for instruments to go in and do the surgery. And then they can do it on a computer, like with a microscope or whatever it is. Yeah. Sometimes it's laser, sometimes it's a snipper, sometimes whatever. But yeah, so that's the type of surgery, and it takes much less time to heal. Much less time to heal.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry,
but
continue on.
But by this surgery, I had actually learned something. Well, I kind of knew it already in surgeries 2 and 3, but because I've had so much problems with doctors and hospitals and stuff in my childhood, I get very anxious if I have to go into the hospital. Mm-hmm. So my first surgery, it took a long time for me to heal because my body was so tense. And then the day after surgery, I did a lot of walking and standing and sitting and not sitting down resting on my couch and just resting.
Right.
So I kind of learned, okay, I got to calm myself down. So by surgery number 3, I was actually given something to help calm me down.
Oh, no, good. Okay.
And so in surgery number 4, I made sure to take that. And I told them what I had taken so that I calmed my body. And they actually gave me, I think there was a cocktail of about 3 or 4 medications that they gave me when I got to the hospital for that one.
The good stuff.
That also calmed my body down. I was almost to the point where I was half falling asleep before they got me to the.
Wow.
I couldn't keep my eyes open.
Yeah.
So I went to sleep quite easily that time.
Oh, good. And did you wake up well? Did you wake up easily?
Fairly easily. That fourth surgery, I heard how quickly nurses can move in the post-op room.
Oh, what happened?
I tend to get sick right after I wake up.
Oh, yeah, that's not uncommon.
And as I'm waking up, there's somebody, I could kind of half tell that there was someone at my head. And just as I'm starting to wake up, I go, I'm going to be sick. And all I could hear was this, as people just rushed in. And then I was asleep again. So I was like, okay. But
Yep.
that surgery, the week before, she had done a second ultrasound, and the cyst that was on the right was now on the left. The one on the right had burst, and we assumed that it burst.
Yeah.
I had been told that cysts, when they burst, are extremely painful, and
It
I'm
can
going,
be extremely painful.
I don't know. I
Well, if
think
you're
I
already
had
in
some,
pain,
well,
you
like,
know,
I think I had some extra cramping feeling, but that's about it.
okay.
Because when you're
So
used
it
to
sounds like you
this,
also, on top of endometriosis, had polycystic ovarian syndrome. That
they never called it that.
okay.
It was just, I think what they were meaning, they were just like water cysts.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
PCOS
They
is
didn't.
when eggs, like they're on the ovary, because an egg will come to maturity, but it won't leave the ovary and go into the uterus. And then the next month, another one will grow, and another one, and another one, and they just keep piling on top of each other until it makes a large cyst. And
Well, okay.
so for people who
Yeah,
don't know what PCOS is,
and
that's what
those
that
ones are
is.
usually quite. They can actually make you look like you're pregnant or
Yep,
have
yep, because
growth
your
coming
body
out
is
of you.
swelling to protect itself. Yeah,
Yeah,
my niece has PCOS, and it can be debilitating. It can be absolutely debilitating.
yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely not an easy thing to have.
So she did find a little bit of endometriosis in that surgery, but not as much as like the cysts. Because she said there was one large one on the left and two or three small ones on the right.
Okay.
So that was something new. So I'm going, okay. So then, because my mom and one of my girl cousins on my mom's side that I know, um, and my grandma, they all went through menopause early or started menopause early. So I was
Mm,
kind of, okay, kind of watching around that as
anytime
I get
now.
close as I get closer to 35. I thought, okay, let's.
Wow.
So in 2015, in the spring of 2015, I went to my doctor and I said, I want you to do blood work to find out if I'm starting menopause because I
Didn't
was
know you could do
having.
that.
Yeah, there's blood tests that they can take.
Oh, I suppose
A
it would check your hormone levels, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't
Okay.
remember the AC something, AC1 or something like that.
A1C is what you take for diabetes.
No, this one
It's a
was,
different.
I think it was an AC something.
Okay.
But I sat there and they took it, and I told her why. I said, and they had tried putting me into a medically induced menopause for 6 months. And so I actually kind of knew what menopause was going to look like. Not very good. But whatever, I knew it would eventually come. So, but she took the blood test, and it came back that I was just starting menopause. So I said, good.
Okay.
I want you to send me to a gynecologist. So I reached out to, at that point, some of my Facebook friends that I knew had hysterectomies, and I asked them who they had gone to and who they would refer me to. Well, one referred my very first gynecologist to me. And I said, there is no way she's touching me ever again.
Okay. Tell us how
and
you really feel.
yeah.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I eventually, they referred me to a Dr. G. And
Mm.
literally, I, I went from my doctor's office and I went to work the next day. And
Mhm.
during the day, I got phoned at work from that gynecologist's office to book an
Mhm.
appointment. And the appointment was
Wow.
literally within a week or two. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
Well, I guess he'd be reviewing and see how many times you've had to have surgery.
Yep.
So it would kind of go right toward the top of the list, would make sense. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So he got me in and he did an exam, and then he wanted me to go and talk to him in his office. Well, I had my best friend at the time with me, and she ended up staying in hospital with me for the 3 nights that I was in hospital after I finished surgery.
Yeah.
Well, he asked me why I wanted the hysterectomy, and I wanted everything out. So along with the hysterectomy was an oophombectomy,
Mhm.
so the ovaries
Which is the
being taken.
ovaries. Yeah.
Yep. And so I sat there and I went, and I told him, I said, because there's a history of cancer in my family. And they had actually sent me to a genetics person as
Oh,
well, referred me to
okay.
genetics. I never did, I went to an information session, but I never got my genetic dispositions. I was
Okay.
supposed to
Yep.
phone and book an appointment, and I phoned to book the appointment, and they never phoned me back. And so I tried a couple weeks later, and the phone number had been disconnected.
That's
So
not
I wasn't
sketchy
too
at
happy.
all.
No.
No.
But it was like it was with the university. So it was
Yeah.
a true genetics, but I don't know what ended
Yeah.
up happening.
Weird.
Yeah. But he looked at me across the table or across his desk. And he said to me, he said, why do you want to do this? And I said, because of my family history of cancer. I want to do
Mhm.
it as preventative. And
Mhm.
he sat there and he said to me, he says, you know, you have a better chance of getting breast cancer or a higher chance of getting breast cancer than ovarian cancer. He says,
Wow.
what would happen if you got breast cancer? And without skipping a beat, I said, cut him off. And his head literally snapped up because he had kind of been looking down as he said it. And he wide-eyed looked at me and he's like, what? I said, cut him off. I don't need him.
Yeah.
I don't think he had ever had anyone so
Just yeah.
um, determined and knew exactly what they wanted to have happen.
Mhm.
And so he took me in. He said he told me that there would be a possibility of complications. He
Yeah.
never told me what those complications could be.
Okay.
He said that because of the amount of scar tissue, there could be complications, but he didn't actually tell me what those complications might be.
Okay.
So he was able to do it laparoscopically,
Good.
and but in the process, I ended up with one of the complications.
Oh, what was that?
There ended up being a tear in my bladder.
Mm.
So he had to do a bladder repair. And he was the one of the only doctors that could confidently and precisely do a bladder repair via laparoscopic surgery. All of the others, all of the other surgeons would have had to open me up. And
Oh,
I and
wow.
it was actually one of his colleagues that told me that I am lucky
Nice.
that he was the one that was the surgeon because he's the only one that could
Yeah.
do it.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I've been through these kind of surgeries so often that I kind of know what to expect waking up.
Mhm.
But I had told Dr. G about the problems with getting sick and everything and waking up, being sick. And he told me, he said, we will make sure you are not sick when
Yeah.
you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And my best friend C, she was there with me, and they had told me on intake, because I had asked them if they could please put the IV in, because my veins move, and it's very hard to find my veins when I'm dehydrated.
Yeah.
Well, when you can't drink after midnight,
Yeah.
and that surgery was probably closer to 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
You'd have been really dehydrated.
I was pretty thirsty by then.
Yeah.
And they said, no, we can't. They have to do it when you get into the operating room. So the
Mm-hmm.
anesthesiologist came and talked to me, as well as Dr. G, beforehand. And when the anesthesiologist was talking with me, I told her that it's really hard to get veins.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, we'll do our best. There's different ways we can do this. And my friend C, she
Mm-hmm.
says, well, we're just going to have to pray that you can get it in the first try.
That's right.
And so when the anesthesiologist left, and before they came to get me, I was in a little kind of holding room,
Mm-hmm.
C and I prayed,
Mm-hmm.
and she prayed that they would get it in right away. My church had been praying for the doctors and the nurses that would be working with me through the time that I
Nice.
was in hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and that the right people would be in there at the right time, and everything. And I honestly, I saw God's leading through the whole time I was in hospital, and through the
Oh,
surgery. Um, we I was taken into surgery, and she got it in the first shot. Now, Dr. G was kind of sitting over on the side of the operating room, just kind of doing notes or something. He was looking at papers or something. I didn't know exactly what he was doing, but
mm-hmm.
and she said to me after she got it in the first try, and she was able to get it in the back of the hand, which is where I much prefer it to be.
Yeah. So much nicer there. Yeah.
And she when she got it in, she said, "Oh, your prayers worked. I got it in the first try." And Dr. G started to laugh. It's like, "Oh, that's weird. That prayer is," and just kind of sloughed it off. And I looked towards him and I said, "Every one of you guys that is in here right now has been prayed for." And he just kind of went off muttering. I think he left the OR for a few minutes and then was probably to
Yeah.
scrub in, and then
Yeah.
they went and they started to put the mask over top of me. Now, in all my surgeries, one of the things that my mom told me before I had my first surgery was, when they tell you to count backwards, don't count backwards, pray.
Mm.
So every one of my surgeries, I went under praying.
Okay.
But with this one, as they put the mask over me, it was this black. The only way I can describe it is, it kind of looked like a black bicycle, like the inner tube part of a bicycle tire,
Okay.
around the edges of the mask. And it smelled like rubber as well.
Mm.
Because of that, I'm assuming it was because of that, when it came to 2020, when we were all supposed to be wearing masks, I couldn't, because
Yeah.
I felt like I was having that mask put on me again. And it was
Sure.
also a trigger from something that had happened years earlier as well,
Yeah.
where my face had been covered. But I went under and I thought everything was fine. When I got back to the room, I actually didn't wake up in the post-op recovery room.
Oh, okay.
Where I had every other time, and that's when I would get sick. And so I obviously didn't get sick. The first thing I remember is them getting me to move over onto the bed in my room, and then them washing all the iodine and stuff off. And I asked for something to eat when I came to a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, by this time, my back is hurting so bad
Oh,
from being laying down for so long. And so I had something to eat, and then of course I fell asleep right away. And I woke up probably 2 or 3 hours later. I think my friend told me it was about 11 o'clock at night when I woke up the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to stand. I wanted to walk.
Oh.
I wanted to get up and go to the bathroom, and just so that I could get it so that my back wasn't hurting quite so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when the nurse told me, she said, well, I can get you to stand up, but I can't get you to walk. You'll have to just stay standing in the one spot. And I'm like, well, why? She says, because you have a catheter in. And I stood for the few minutes and I got back into bed and I laid there and the tears started. Because now I knew that and I could actually feel that there was something coming out of me. And within half an hour, she was over by my bed because I was crying so bad. And she eventually went out and got the nurse, and the nurse came in and I said, can you please take it out? Please take it. And I was freaking out, like I was beyond upset. And she told me, she says, I can't take it out. Because
has to be doctor's orders.
She said, if I take it out, we're going to have to put it back in.
Yeah.
And my anxiety was through the roof. I was panicking. And I think they might have given me something to calm down. But C sat on the bed with me until I calmed down and fell back asleep. And when, she stayed in the hospital room with me for the 3 nights that I was in there. And the next morning they came in for rounds and I was told that I had a catheter in and what had happened. And that I had to have the catheter in for 10 days.
So what happened that you had to have the catheter? Was it because of the bladder tear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of having the bladder repair done. But all through the time
they couldn't allow it to swell up. They had to make sure everything was coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's rough.
So I ended up staying in hospital all of that day. I could have gone home, but I was too freaked out about this thing being in me.
Oh, yeah.
And so we stayed that day and we kind of talked about everything, and I was freaking out and just trying to get to be okay with the fact that there's something there. And
yeah.
It felt like I was sitting on something else all the time. But
now, for those of you who are only tuning into this episode, who have not heard the rest of Krystal's story, she had been SA'd most of her life as a child. And so that's why this specific thing was so traumatic. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. I was okay when I was in the hospital bed because I could lay in such a way that I couldn't feel it, or sit in a way that I couldn't feel it. C and I went for walks around the hospital that first day. And it was in the afternoon that they were giving me pills when, like, I think it was every 4 hours they were bringing some pills to me. And finally, we were just coming back from one of our walks, and they hand me the little thing, take these. And I said, what is this that I'm taking? Well, it's this Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol. I said, do I need to have it? And they're like, well, if you've got pain, it'll help with the pain. And I said, then I'm not going to take it. I have no pain. I never had any pain through the whole
Wow.
thing. And yet I had heard just about everybody that I had talked to before, half of them were on morphine for 2 days after surgery. And here I am, not even 24 hours later, going, I'm not going to take Tylenol.
Yeah.
Why put that into me when I don't need it?
That's right.
No
Yeah, if
pain.
you don't need medication, don't take it.
But I do have a very high pain threshold. Go figure.
Yeah.
But the third, or the second full day that I was like, not the day, yeah, I guess it was, no, it wasn't the day right after surgery, because I had decided to stay in that night. The next morning, we were getting ready to go. I was okay with the whole fact that I think I can handle this, and she was literally just a phone call away, and she would be at my place to help me. She knew
For
a lot of
sure.
medical stuff,
Oh,
so
good.
she was able to kind of help in that way. And so we did, and it was also her birthday that day, so I kind of wanted to get her home.
Yeah.
And I
You're
had
a good
been,
friend.
and I had been discharged. I had already signed the papers and stuff, and I went to the bathroom before we left, and there was more coming out normally than there was going into the catheter bag. And there was also some blood coming out. So I got C to call the nurse, and they came and they looked, and they said, it looks like we're going to have to readjust how the catheter is sitting. And of course, the tears started.
For sure.
And the shaking started.
Absolutely.
I had absolutely incredible nurses. The day nurses and the night nurses were the same through the whole time I was there. So I didn't have to tell new nurses every shift what was going on. C went out that first night and explained to the nurses why I was freaking out and why I was saying I needed the catheter out. And she told me, she says, I saw a 180-degree turn on the attitude of the nurses once they knew you were a survivor of SA.
Yeah.
And they treated me a lot better. My alter came out quite a bit through that stay, and so they kind of got to see my alter. I don't know if they really realized or not.
So her alter, for those of you who have not seen all of the different episodes as well, Krystal has an alternate personality. So she has, would you say total DID or partial DID?
They don't actually call me a full DID because I never 100% split.
Okay, so DID is dissociative identity disorder, which is what they used to call split personality disorder.
Yeah. The way it's been described to me is a true DID. When they're being abused, the host, the regular person, like you and me, is left on the bed, but it's a sense, in a sense, a spirit, I guess, breaks apart and leaves the room, completely leaves the room. And so that's another personality. And every time they have something else happen and another piece of them breaks off and leaves the room, that's another personality. And that's why some people can have hundreds of personalities.
Right.
With me, I had the out of body experiences, but I just hovered. I could see myself and what was going on, but I never left the room.
Right.
I was just looking down at what was happening to this person on the bed.
Yeah.
And
I have a personal relationship with Krystal in that we are good friends in person. And a number of months ago, we were at a movie. She was triggered, and I got to meet her alter for quite a while after that. We got to spend some time together. And if you're saying, well, how do you know? Like, really? Total change of voice, total change of countenance, total change of facial expression, body expression, everything was different. It wasn't Krystal anymore at all. So yeah, that was, I can honestly say 100% I believe you. Yeah.
And C knew how to be there for my alter.
Yeah.
My alter usually comes out when there's extremely stressful situations that trigger from the abuse that I suffered. She is protector, which sounds funny because usually she either presents as about a 4-year-old, I think, or about a 12-year-old. Sometimes she's presented that way, but that when she presents as 12, you don't usually see the difference in her and I. Some people have been able to see the difference, but when she's the younger one, you definitely can tell the difference between the two.
Yeah, I saw the 4-year-old. Yeah.
And so they told me they would have to reposition it's like they put with, if you haven't had a catheter in, it's kind of like a balloon that they put into your bladder.
Urethra. Yep.
And it kind of it keeps your bladder at a steady size so that it doesn't get too big. And then the urine goes into that balloon and out through the catheter. And so they had to release the balloon. And so C sat on the bed right beside me while they were doing this, and my alter took over quite quickly.
For sure. Yep.
And C just sat there. When she would sit on the bed and be comforting me, she was sitting facing so that she could see my face and I could see her face, and she would just talk to me and let me know it was okay. And she would use my alter's name, which when she does come out, when my alter does come out, if somebody is talking with her and using her name, it actually helps her a lot to feel comfortable, feel like she's being heard. But yeah, it's amazing. But they did this, they readjusted it. I have no memory of them really. I was there as they were kind of emptying it, and then I was gone. And I think it was probably, I think C said it was about 2 hours later when I started to kind of blink a little bit more and the tears started.
Yeah.
It was probably, I think she said, about another half an hour before I could even slowly start to try and voice what was going on. And I was in my head, and what I finally was able to voice to her was, I've already been discharged. And I was scared that they would make me go home. And it was actually my altar that said it. And so she pushed the call button and asked the nurse to come in, because of course she couldn't leave my side at that point. She wouldn't have left my side because I was still in an altered state. And so she called the nurse in and she said, Krystal's concerned that she can't stay tonight. And the nurse said, no, it's okay, you can stay. You're more than welcome to stay. And of course, by then the supper trays had already gone through. So C and I ended up going down to the cafeteria and having supper there. Not that I really felt like eating, but she made me at least try and get down some soup. That's another thing with the altar. She doesn't like to eat very much.
No. Well, she's a little girl, so why would she? Yeah.
So it just, and she just helped calm me down. And of course she had to phone and let her husband know that we're not coming home today, because
yeah, for sure.
Krystal's freaked out and they had to redo some things. And
yeah.
So we got home on the Saturday morning of that week, and she had to be at church the next day because they were doing, I think it was her husband's retirement.
Oh.
I can't remember if it was his retirement or if it was a farewell for a couple that was in the church. But she had to, they had to be there because they were part of the celebration.
Right. Okay.
And on the Saturday, once I got home, my other good friend, another C, she ended up coming over. I had reached out to her to ask her to look after my cat.
Right.
Because it was going to be an extra day. And she ended up coming over and just sitting with me. And it was incredible. And then I got talking with a lady who, she was the RCMP officer who did the investigation when I charged, and her and I have become very close friends.
Right.
And she calls me her hero. Whatever.
Hero. You can call me a hero if you must. Yeah, no, it's, and Indigo, she's right. Indigo says, I'm sorry you experienced such trauma. It created altars. But thank you, Krystal, for sharing and trusting us with your story. Yeah.
If I can help someone else, then it was worth it.
Absolutely. It makes it hard for people who've never been through a trauma like this to hear somebody say it's worth going through this trauma if it helps somebody. People who've been through trauma might have a better understanding of what you're talking about when you say that. And especially those of us who believe that there's a purpose to life beyond just what's going on here and now, right? Yeah. So that's a big thing. That's huge. Yeah.
So,
and Misha says, we love you so much, Krystal.
Yes. By the time Sunday rolled around, I was beyond myself, anxious, and I couldn't handle it anymore. And all I wanted to do was get taken back to the hospital and be put back into the hospital. And for somebody who hates hospitals and doesn't want to be in them.
Yeah.
So my pastor's wife at the time and a lady that I worked with in ladies ministry, they ended up taking me back to Saskatoon and we got there just in time for City Hospital's emergency room to close. We just
Right.
squeaked in the door.
Right in the
And
next plate.
yeah. And of course, I had been so upset and everything that
Oh yeah.
I hadn't drank very much that day.
Mm.
And the catheter was hurting, and I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle that constant reminder that there was something sticking out of me. And of course, my cat that I had at the time, she wanted to comfort me. But when she comforted me, it was on my tummy. And she couldn't sit on my tummy because I just had surgery. And a
Yep.
16-pound cat is not a good thing to.
No. After surgery, you're not supposed to hold more than 10 pounds. So 16
Yeah.
pounds, that would be a little much. Yeah.
But we went into the hospital, and eventually I was looked at by
Mhm.
a male resident that was a cocky idiot, like I said on Tuesday.
Different guy than last time, though, right? Or is this the
Nope,
same guy?
this is the one from last time.
Gotcha. Yes. Hi, Serenity now. Nice to meet you.
So eventually I
Mhm.
was seen, and I guess part of the reason it was hurting me is because I hadn't had anything much to drink that day. And
Oh,
so
so you were
my
shrinking
body
in
was a
around
bit,
it.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So that was all figured out, and they got me calmed down, and I found out that it was okay for me to use my fast acting anxiety meds for the next while at a higher dose than I thought.
Mhm.
And 10 days after surgery, I had the catheter taken out, and everything was okay. Now, when they take a catheter out, before they take it out, they have to fill it as full as they possibly can. They pump it full of water so that they can make sure that the bladder around it has healed and that there's no more leaks. And that was painful.
I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, not the painful part, but what they
Yeah,
did. Okay. Interesting.
yeah, because they had to talk me through it. She was not allowed to hold my hand or be in the room with me, but she was because it was X-ray imaging that they were.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so, but she was able to. She was able to be behind a glass partition that I could see her through the glass, so that helped a little bit. And then as
Right.
soon as they were finished, they let her know, and she came right over and was there. Of course, I was crying and beyond myself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Fast forward 2 or 3 days after I got home from having that taken out, and I went to have breakfast the one morning, and I'd sat down with my breakfast, and I sneezed.
Yep.
And as most older females know, when you sneeze, you sometimes pee a little. And I know this is going to sound stupid, but it felt like I had peed a little bit more than just a little tiny bit. So I kind of reached down to see if underneath me was wet, like the seat. And I'm like, okay, I obviously peed through my clothes, so I'm going to have to get up and change. I pulled my hand out, and it was full of blood. And so I rushed down to my bathroom, and I sat down, and there was just these clots coming out and coming out and coming out. I was terrified.
Yeah.
So then I had to try and stop it so that I could get back out to the main part of my trailer to get my phone so that I could phone C. And I phoned her, and I said, and of course I took the phone back to the washroom because I needed to sit down because more
Yeah.
clots were starting to come out and I could feel
Oh, my
them.
goodness. Yes.
And she came over. I told her what was happening. She came over. I phoned the nurse's station because I had been told that I could. I got a nurse that didn't know my story and
Mm.
had not been there when I was in hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And she was not happy with me phoning. She's like, "You're not supposed to call here." And she was mean. And they were just in the process of switching nurses. Like it was switch over time.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, one of the nurses that had been my nurse when I was in the hospital was the day one coming on.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I was able to talk to her, and she said, "Okay, phone your doctor's office, find out what they want you to do, but you're probably going to have to come in." So C and I got things
Yeah.
ready so that we could leave right away. And
Oh,
so
for
I
sure.
was trying to get a hold, and finally I got a hold of my doctor's office, and we were like, we had just stopped at C's place so she could get her stuff, and we were on our way. And they said, "Okay,
You've been
go
so
to."
protected. You've been so protected, my friend. Like, even through all of this, I think of how you have been so covered, and it could have been so much worse. You had the
Yeah,
right people at the right time in the right places,
yeah.
just right there to protect you.
Thank,
Yes.
thankfully, by the time we left, the
Yeah.
clotting and the stuff coming out had kind of slowed down. I figured I was okay as long as I didn't move.
Yeah. Don't sneeze.
Yeah, yeah, because I didn't really want to get blood all over the seat of her car.
Yeah, no.
But we started to go, and we were told go to emergency at City Hospital. And the doctor that saw me, she or he came in to see me, and he's like, "Well, I'm not sure what we're gonna do." They couldn't get a hold of my surgeon because he was in surgery,
Oh, yeah. That happens.
and he was in a long surgery, and he couldn't be pulled out for any reason.
For sure.
And we had sat in emergency in a little cubicle for a good couple of hours by then, and C
Mhm.
was getting hungry, and I had said, "Okay, I know I can't eat just in case they have to take me back in for surgery."
Exactly. Yep.
And so she went. She didn't want to eat in front of me, and I was thankful for that.
Yeah.
And so just before she got back, the doctor came in and said, "Okay, we're going to have to do an exam and see what's going on down there." And I'm going, "Okay, but we're going to have to wait for my friend to get back because there ain't no way nobody's
Yeah.
touching me if she's not here."
Yep. Yep.
Thankfully, I said that. And
Yeah.
thankfully, I waited. Because if I hadn't, um, we could have ended up with things being a lot worse. They finally decided to put me up on the floor and do an observation overnight, um, just to see what was going on, and because
Yep.
the bleeding had stopped at that point, but they weren't completely convinced that it wouldn't start again.
For sure. Yeah.
So shortly after I got up to the room, of course, C went to go and get our stuff for overnight, and the one nurse came in, and she they had to do a bunch of testing, I guess, to make sure that I was safe and didn't have any disease or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "You ain't touching me until my friend gets back." Even though it was a female nurse, I just, no, I'm not having anything unless my friend is there. And my friend came back, and they did their little test. I guess I can't even remember what they did. They just kind of touched a few spots, and then I was okay. Well, as that nurse was leaving, another nurse came into the room, and she looked at me and she said, "Are you the one that phoned the nurses station this morning?" And I said, "Yeah, that was me." She said, "I need to apologize to you for my attitude." She had been the nurse that had gotten upset with me. And she said that they had explained to her the situation afterwards and why I was allowed to, and she was okay. But Dr. G ended up coming into my room just shortly after that. And he talked with me, and he's got a strange bedside manner, but by then
You're used to it.
it was a good rapport. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
he was kind of joking with me, and I saw him joking with the nurses, which kind of helped put me even more at ease. But he was bringing the papers in for me to sign in case I ended up bleeding more and had to have a blood transfusion.
Yep.
And
Or surgery or
I gladly signed those papers quite quickly. And at that point he had heard that what had happened when I was down in the ER, and he said, "You are lucky that doctor did not do the exam on you, because if he had have put anything in there to check, it could have ended up worse. It could have torn things."
I could just see him putting in a speculum to stretch you out. Oh, man.
It could have possibly ripped the stitches.
Oh, yeah.
So I was thankful for that. God protected me on that one.
I'm just going to point out here, Mary says, one day you'll tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. That is 100% the truth. And
that is why I
right.
share.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Whoever else that, but they still didn't really know. Like, he said that sometimes on the site where they do the stitching to close everything, sometimes there'll become clots along that line, and
that makes sense.
There's times it will burst, and that's probably what you had that day.
Oh. So it was more scary than actually medically bad.
I guess so.
Yeah, but
they weren't
beyond mind-blowingly scary.
I know.
I cannot imagine. I can't imagine. Wow.
So I was released to go home the next day. So I went home, and when I went for my 6-week post-op, when he did the exam, there was more clots along that line again, but they weren't very big, and so he cauterized them. They use liquid nitrogen sticks to do the cauterizing. Now,
I've had that done on warts. It's not comfortable.
I've actually had a thing removed off my eyelid with liquid nitrogen, and it didn't hurt.
Okay, you're a bit tougher than me.
I think I was about 7 or 8 when that happened.
Wow.
But he said that it might be a bit painful, and internal pain is different than external pain.
It is, yeah.
So he did the cauterizing. Well, it ends up going cold, and it feels really cold as it seals everything. So about half an hour after he did the cauterizing, I'm going, "Oh, that's a really weird sensation. That's cold in there."
Yeah.
It felt weird. But because he ended up cauterizing it, there wasn't any more breakthrough bleeding or anything from the surgery.
Wonderful.
And
what a
thankfully,
relief.
everything else had healed properly.
Yeah.
It took a long time before I could even talk about what happened through the surgery, after surgery, and even start to deal with the fact that there was a lot of trauma that happened the day of surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell this all now, knowing that in a week's time is the anniversary of that surgery.
Yep.
So yeah, it's still fresh in my mind every year. It comes back. And
How
there's
long ago
more.
was this?
2015. So 9 years
Oh,
ago this
wow.
year.
So 9 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's
It
still things of
gets,
it that I'm just learning and
yep.
just remembering.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that was. So I had a complete hysterectomy and a appendectomy 9 years ago, and ever since it's been a struggle to get hormones and chemicals balanced properly. And because of that surgery is why I ended up being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and anxiety. You're muted. That's better.
Is it working now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I hit it funny. Okay. But that's one of the, I'm just going to do this and let you guys figure out what I was saying. Um, it's one of those kind of backhanded benefits in that, you know, you likely had those things going on before the surgery. It
Yeah.
happened to get discussed and caught and treated after the surgery because it was just heightened probably so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before surgery, I had been seeing the same counselor for probably 3 or 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Um, and before surgery, I was starting to get to the point where I wanted to talk about what happened, like in detail. And
Yep.
every time I would start to bring it up and want to talk about the memory, she would shut me down. Her main
What?
form her main form of therapy was working with the somatic. And in somatic therapy, their premise is they don't want you to go back into the times of abuse because they think it can re-traumatize you. Which
Wow.
in some people, yeah, that's probably the case. But for me, because we weren't allowed to say those words growing up, and because everything was pushed down, I had to say those words.
They had so much power over you.
Yeah,
Like those words not being let free were just this great big thing.
yeah. It was crazy. And just before surgery, we'd kind of had a falling out because she was trying to get me to do a visualization, and I couldn't do it. And because of the other things that were going on with me, having problems with other stuff, I'm like, I knew I had to stop seeing her for a bit while I was gone because I couldn't get in to see her as easily. And with being off for 6 weeks, I wasn't getting paid as much as, or actually 8 weeks I was off. I kind of had to make sure I had extra money because I knew that there would be extra trips to the city and stuff. And so
Right.
I'd actually told her that I didn't know when I'd be able to go in to see her again, because it would have to be once I could actually drive again,
Oh,
because you're
yeah.
not allowed to drive for 6 weeks after major surgery.
No. Well, between the anesthesia and the having to sit and have your core involved, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of
Well,
sense.
plus if you're in an accident and you're behind the wheel, it could end up hurting the abdomen even more.
For
So,
sure.
but
All right.
I told her, I said, I'm not going to be able to come in for a while. And that was my way of being able to sever that relationship with her. And so I started with a brand new counselor a year later, a year after surgery. And I am still seeing that counselor to this day. She is my
And
current
she's
counselor.
wonderful. Wonderful. So that's a great place to end for today,
Yes.
because then we can talk about next time. We can talk about the benefit that this new counselor has had with you, because she's been fantastic. And each one of your counselors, I think it has just shown where each of them needed to be at that moment, and where you've grown from there just to get past that. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, um, Misha, sending you so much love, Krystal. Absolutely, Misha, 100%. Serenity now, nice to meet you. Years after she got cauterized, ended up with endometriosis. And she's also sending hugs. And we all, yep, Mary, just hearts for Krystal. Absolutely. This has been a very emotional, um, it's been a very emotional discussion. Thank you, my friend. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
your
giving
openness
me
and your
space.
vulnerability and your willingness to allow us into your heart, so that if somebody who replay crew somewhere down the road, we don't know where it's going to end up, right? We don't know where it's going to end up, but somebody is going to hear this, and somebody is going to be blessed by it. I can guarantee it. It's the way it works. So,
When I when I went for my 6 week follow up, I took a card to my gynecologist, a thank you card, and thanked him for all he had done. And he looked really surprised that he was being given a card. I don't think many
yeah.
people give him cards for taking everything out.
Well,
Maybe if there was a baby, but there was no baby.
you never know. Yeah. No babies. Thank you. Yeah.
No. So
Yeah. All right. So, for those of you who don't know, this is Krystal's 7th time with us, and this is our 70th show. So, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, chat, for being kind and respectful, and just thank you for being here. I really appreciate you all. I'm going to have to say good night for now, and I will see you again on Tuesday. I do not yet know who is going to be on Tuesday. Um, I this is my September. As you can see,
pretty
I have
open.
some spots to be full. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty open. I have Kristen Melinda coming on the 12th. I have Krystal and Jen Marie going to be on the 17th. Other than that, I'm open. So email me at myotherskeeperis@gmail.com. There are one or two people I do want to talk to, and unfortunately this weekend I'm going to a family reunion. But we can make time to talk, whether it's anytime. I shouldn't say anytime tomorrow. We'll be traveling tomorrow, so I could do a phone call. It might be difficult to do Facebook. So Yeah, get in touch with me. I would love to talk to you. As you can see, we are here to tell stories of not only trauma, but especially stories of, oh, Mary will be in on Tuesday.
Here we go.
I had texted her earlier and hadn't yet seen her reply. So, Mary, hi, Mary. Thank you. We'll be in on Tuesday, and we will be revisiting the One Last Hug. We will be doing a little bit of just a review of how that has been for her. So, all right, Mary, there you are.
I
And
do. There's one other thing I do want to say before we
yes,
go.
ma'am. Yes.
And I say this to anyone who is possibly looking to go in for a hysterectomy or has to have a hysterectomy. Please do not be afraid to go in. I am sharing what happened with me. I am sharing it because I'm a survivor. There's questions to make sure you ask of your surgeon. Ask those difficult questions.
Yes.
The one question I forgot to ask him was, if these complications that you have mentioned come about, what are they and what can I expect? So that I could have, if I had have known that the product of complications could be a catheter, I could have been more prepared.
Yeah.
And
the
I could have,
possibility of the clots releasing as well.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that was a fluke, but
Fluke or not, it's something that
yeah.
a doctor could, they could say there's like a 2% chance this is going to happen.
Yeah.
But at least you would know that there is that 2% chance, right?
Yes. And please, if you are thinking of having a hysterectomy, please do it for your own health. Even after all the scary stuff that happened, I am still thankful that I went ahead and had it done.
Yeah.
So please be encouraged.
Yes. Please.
It's not always scary.
No. Yeah, I had a hysterectomy about 20 years ago. It wasn't nearly this scary. But yeah, I will see everybody on Tuesday with Mary. Yes. We're going to talk about her visit with her aunt, who was here, or with her, I guess, not that long ago. And yes, education and awareness. You know, without it, so many go without any kind of idea.
Yes.
And yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, I will see you all on Tuesday. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye.